I knew something was wrong the second my tires hit the gravel. My land wasn't supposed to have shadows that tall. It wasn't supposed to have walls. It wasn't supposed to have glass catching the sun like a predator's eye. It was supposed to be untouched pasture. Quiet, empty, mine? But what stood there was a mansion. A full $1 million Mediterranean monument rising out of the soil like a trespass wound. I stepped out of the truck and stared at the columns, the arches, the stonework. My work, my engineering, my design signatures stolen and glued onto a structure I never approved. Someone had invaded my land while I was fighting for my wife's life. Someone had weaponized my blueprints and built a kingdom over my deed, and when the front door opened, that someone walked out. Karen, confident, polished, moving like she owned the entire mountain range. She stopped at the top of the stairs with a smile sharp enough to slice through reason. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice clean and steady, the tone of someone accustomed to issuing commands and having them obeyed, the tone HOA overlords develop after years of policing lawns and mailboxes. I held up my deed. "This is my land," I said. Her smile didn't move. "No," she replied softly. "It's mine." She glided down the steps and held out her hand like she was greeting a guest, instead of the person she just tried to erase. I put the deed in her palm. She glanced at it with the detached politeness of someone looking at a fake coupon. "This is unfortunate," she murmured. "Someone scammed you." Then she reached into her designer bag and lifted a folder thicker than a building permit packet. She held 8 years of supposed ownership in her hands, 8 years of documentation, 8 years of forged authority she intended to weaponize against me. Every page stamped, every line pre-aged, every seal looking official. It didn't matter that it contradicted county records. It didn't matter that I had purchased the land 6 months earlier. The performance was polished, rehearsed, meant to intimidate, and she stood there waiting for me to fold. "You should leave the property," she added, "for your own sake. Trespassing comes with consequences." Every word was calculated, every glance engineered to push me off the land I legally owned. I didn't move. She didn't like that. Her smile hardened at the edges. "Where are you watching from right now?" she asked suddenly, as if pivoting into small talk with a stranger online. "Drop it in the comments." I blinked. "What did you say?" "Just a little joke," she said, but her eyes didn't match the smile. Something was rehearsed about it. Something was off. Before I could respond, she pivoted again. "Where do you live?" she asked. "How long have you been here?" Questions layered like surveillance probes. "Before we go any further," I said, "I need to know where your permits came from." Her face didn't flinch. "Oh, that?" she said. "Steve Collins at the county office handled everything. He's extremely reliable." And that was when the first wall cracked. Because she shouldn't have known that I knew nothing about Collins yet. She shouldn't have been prepared to drop his name like a shield. She shouldn't have been that confident. But here's where everything blew apart. She wasn't confident because she owned the land. She was confident because she thought the system already belonged to her. "Let me walk you through the paperwork," she said, flipping her folder open like a realtor unveiling a brochure. "See? Ownership since 2015. Mortgages, insurance, loan approvals, everything authenticated." She turned each page slowly, like she wanted me to admire the craftsmanship of the fraud she built. The deeper she flipped, the clearer it became. This wasn't amateur forgery. This was a blueprint of organized manipulation. Someone with access to county systems had helped her build a false timeline. Someone who knew how records were stored. Someone who knew how to backdate entries. Someone like a county clerk. "You should go," she repeated. Softer this time. like she was granting mercy. I took the papers from her hand. My fingers traced the embossing on a permit application. It was official. Too official. Every detail aligned perfectly enough to be manufactured, not genuine. And then I looked at the stone behind her again, the curve in the archway, the way the roof line met the stucco. It was mine. My lines, my ratios, my calculations. "Where did you get these plans?" I asked. She lifted her chin. "My architect." I didn't blink. "Name?" "He's retired," she said too quickly. "Very private." Lie. She stepped back up the stairs like a queen retreating into her fortress. "You need to contact the county," she said. "Tell them someone tricked you. I'd help if I could, but this is out of my hands." She turned to walk inside. I followed her to the door. "Why did construction begin when I wasn't here?" I asked. She froze mid-step. "Excuse me? Why did you start building the moment I couldn't visit the land?" She didn't turn around. She didn't answer. She simply disappeared inside and shut the door like a curtain falling on the first act of a play I didn't audition for. I stood on the steps, looking at the $1 million mansion sitting on the land my wife, Julia, and I had chosen together. She was gone now. And someone had used my grief as the blueprint for their invasion. But that wasn't even the half of it. I walked around the property slowly, memorizing every detail, every stone, every angle, every theft. I ran my hand along the stucco. I recognized the texture mix. A contractor mix I developed myself after years of failures and refinements. A mix I had never published. A mix someone had stolen. My design wasn't just referenced. It wasn't just copied. It was extracted, which meant someone had access to my files, my work, my archive, my life. I drove straight to the county courthouse. I walked through the door expecting answers. Instead, I walked into a wall. Collins didn't look up when I approached. "Name?" he asked. "Mitchell," I said. "I need to verify a deed." He took the paper from my hand and glanced for half a second before sliding it back like it was contaminated. "Fake," he said. "Property belongs to Henderson. No verification, no lookup, no database check. Just instant dismissal." "Run the file ID," I said. He shrugged. "No point, happens all the time, scammers everywhere." His tone was the same tone Karen used, the same cadence, the same script. "Where are you watching from?" Karen had said. "Drop it in the comments." And now Collins was speaking like a pre-recorded answer line. Something wasn't just wrong. It was coordinated. I leaned closer. "You didn't check the system," I said, "because I don't need to." His voice dropped into something colder. "Take the loss and move on." Something inside me pushed back. The same instinct that kept buildings standing during storms. "No," I said. "I won't." Collins finally looked up. And in his eyes, I saw something that told me the truth. He already knew who I was. He already knew the deed. He already knew the story he was paid to tell. And he wasn't surprised to see me. He was prepared. That meant Karen warned him. That meant the fraud was planned. That meant someone tried to rewrite my ownership before I ever walked in the door. I stepped outside into the sunlight, but everything felt darker. My wife was gone. My land was stolen. My work was stolen. And someone in that building had helped make it happen. But that wasn't even the half of it. This story didn't start with the mansion. It didn't start with Karen. It didn't start with the county. It started with the moment my wife got sick. The moment I stopped visiting the land. The moment someone realized I was vulnerable. And they built their plan around that moment. I started the truck. My pulse didn't shake. My voice didn't tremble. Fury didn't control me. Control controlled me. If Karen thought she built a fortress on stolen land, she forgot one thing. I build things for a living, and I know exactly how to tear them apart. 6 months before the mansion rose like an insult on my land, the world had still been intact. Julia and I had stood in the center of the 5 acres, the cold wind pulling at her hair as she lifted her face to the sunrise. "Right here," she'd said, pointing to an empty patch of grass. "Kitchen window. I want the light to hit us first thing every morning." I could still hear her voice in that exact spot, warm, hopeful, untouched by what was coming. We walked the land for hours that day, tracing imaginary walls, picturing gardens, imagining the quiet life we were going to build together. No HOA mafia watching. No clipboard parasites measuring grass. No fraudulent overlords rewriting history. Just space, freedom, peace. We bought the land with every legal safeguard possible. Title insurance, registry verification, surveyor confirmation. We had the deed stamped, signed, sealed, validated. Everything clean, everything real, everything ours. Then life broke. Julia's diagnosis dropped like a tree splitting in the dark. A sound I can still feel. Hospital rooms swallowed our days. Chemotherapy swallowed her strength. We stopped visiting the land because the only land that mattered was the floor under her hospital bed. I thought nature would wait for us. I thought the property would remain untouched until I returned. I never imagined someone would watch our absence like hawks circling a wounded animal. I never imagined someone would time their invasion to the exact moment I couldn't fight back. But Karen did. She began building the mansion during the weeks I was sleeping in hospital chairs. She filed permits during the nights I was begging doctors for one more treatment. She trespassed with the precision of someone who'd been studying my life from a distance, waiting for the perfect second to strike. Back then, I still believed people had limits. I still believed someone like her wouldn't dare erect a $1 million structure on land that didn't belong to her, but I didn't understand her yet. I didn't understand that she operated like an off-the-books HOA warlord, someone who didn't enforce rules but rewrote them, someone who believed documentation was just another weapon, and someone who viewed vulnerable people as convenient stepping stones. After Julia passed, I didn't go back to the land right away. I couldn't. Every piece of it hurt. Every inch was a reminder of a future that slipped away. And that was the opening Karen exploited. When I finally drove out to check the property, the sun was low and my chest felt hollow. I expected grass, dirt, a quiet breeze. Instead, I saw a mansion so large it looked anchored into the earth. The shock didn't hit like lightning. It hit like silence. Heavy, thick, wrong. Most people panic in moments like that. But grief doesn't panic. Grief hardens. Grief creates clarity where fear used to live. I stepped out of the truck, walked straight to the structure, and put my hand on the stone. I knew instantly. That mix, that texture, that pattern, it was mine. Not metaphorically, literally. My proprietary stucco formula. Something I developed through years of trial and expensive mistakes. Something I never released. Something I kept in private design files. Either a contractor leaked it, or someone accessed my computer. Both possibilities pointed to the same truth. Karen didn't just steal land. She stole knowledge, my craft, my work. And she weaponized it to create the illusion of legitimacy. That realization didn't make me furious. It made me focused. There is a moment in every builder's life when you stop looking at a structure as a home and start seeing it as a blueprint. A thing that can be reverse engineered, dismantled, taken apart until the truth is exposed. As I walked around the mansion, every detail told a story I recognized. The roof line with the half-inch pitch I preferred. The driveway curvature matching my personal layout templates. The drainage slope calculated exactly how I taught my apprentices. If I had built a home here for a rich client, it would have looked exactly like this. Except this wasn't my client, this wasn't my contract. This wasn't my land by permission, it was my land by law, and someone trespassed against both land and legacy. When I replayed the moment Karen smiled at me with all that borrowed authority, something inside snapped into position. She wasn't improvising. She was executing. She spoke with the confidence of someone who believed the system already belonged to her. Someone who believed her documents were stronger than my deed. Someone who believed the county clerk would support whatever story she presented. But here's where everything blew apart for her. I don't operate like the targets she usually preys on. I don't fold. I don't retreat. And I don't get intimidated by paper. As I stood in the center of my land that day, the emotional escalation wasn't panic or anger, it was control. Cold, calculated, dangerous. I knew one thing. If Karen forged an 8-year timeline, she needed help. Professional help. Someone inside the county office. Someone with access to property systems. Someone who could backdate permits and hide purchase records. Someone like Collins. The revelation didn't overwhelm me. It sharpened me. Every predator believes they're the hunter until they meet someone who doesn't run. And grief had stripped running out of my bones. So I rebuilt myself the way I rebuild a fractured joist. Remove what's rotten, reinforce what remains, and prepare to carry more weight. That's when I remembered something from the day Julia and I bought the land. The registrar at the office had walked us through every page, every signature, every certificate ID, every step clear, verified, logged. There was no ambiguity in the purchase, no clerical error, no missed step, no chance the sale was fraudulent, which meant the fraud came after. Someone deliberately overwrote the history after our purchase. Someone erased us. Someone decided we didn't exist. That's what pushed the emotional escalation into fury, not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that burns clean. When someone tries to erase the last decision you and your wife made together, you don't let it go. You don't back down. You don't walk away. You go to war. And that war doesn't start with shouting. It starts with proof. It starts with records. It starts with surveillance of the people who tried to surveil you. The cliffhanger formed that night when I sat at my kitchen table staring at the deed. I remembered something the registrar had said when we bought the land. The seal is the key. If anyone ever claims this isn't yours, match the seal. So I held the deed under the lamp. The seal shimmered, crisp, clean, genuine. And that was when the entire truth clicked into place. My deed was real. My land was real. My purchase was real. The fraud wasn't behind me, it was in front of me. And that meant everything Karen built was already collapsing. She just didn't know it yet. I walked into the county building expecting resistance, but I didn't expect the door to feel like it sealed behind me. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead with that stale government buzz that makes every room feel judgmental. Colin sat behind the counter like a retired HOA enforcer who'd traded cul-de-sacs for county seals, the kind of man who believed a laminated ID badge turned him into a gatekeeper of reality itself. I slid my deed across the counter with steady hands. He didn't even look at me, didn't ask a question, didn't verify a single number. Instead, he skimmed the paper for half a second, then pushed it back with 2 fingers, like it was a contaminated pamphlet. "Fake," he said. Just that one word. Soft. Uninterested. Final. But his voice wasn't just dismissive. It was scripted. Too clean. Too prepared. Like he'd rehearsed the line before I even walked in. "Run the file ID," I said, keeping my tone flat. Controlled. A man like Collins feeds on emotional reactions, mistaking them for guilt. I gave him nothing. He shrugged and leaned back, folding his hands behind his head like he was sunbathing in authority. "No need," he said. "Property's been Henderson's for years. Happens all the time. Scammers everywhere. The echo of Karen's tone hit me like a hammer. Same rhythm, same cadence, same attempt to bury truth under condescension. She had used the word scam, too. She had used it before I even mentioned the sale. That wasn't coincidence. That was orchestration. You're not even checking the system, I said. My voice stayed level, a quiet blade. He smiled. Not a real smile, the kind HOA tyrants give when they think the rules bend for them alone. System's clear, he muttered. Nothing to check. But he hadn't touched the keyboard. He hadn't opened a file. He hadn't entered the ID. He'd determined the outcome before I walked from the parking lot to the counter. The emotional escalation didn't feel like fury. It felt like calculation. If Karen had rehearsed her lines and Collins had rehearsed his, that meant they'd rehearsed together. And rehearsals require planning. And planning requires motive. And motive requires history. I leaned forward an inch. Who told you I was coming? I asked. His jaw twitched the way a man's jaw twitches when truth runs too close to the skin. No one, he answered too fast. Is there anything else? That twitch was all the confirmation I needed. Collins wasn't just dismissive. He was complicit. He wasn't just refusing help. He was sabotaging it. He was the HOA board member of the county office, smiling while he nailed the violation notice to your front door before you even broke the rule. I stepped back slowly, taking in every detail of his station. The stamps, the seal, the drawer he kept locked, the computer he never touched in my presence. Something inside that workspace had played a role in rewriting my property history. Something in that office had been used to smooth out Karen's lies and sharpen her authority. File a police report, he said, waving his hand like he was swatting a fly. Your money's gone. His voice cracked on the word gone. Not much, but enough. People who believe what they're saying don't crack. People who perform do. I turned without another word. Silence is the one weapon bureaucrats never expect. They're used to people arguing, pleading, begging. But silence? Silence means war. Outside, the heat hit my face like a spotlight. I got into my truck and didn't start it. Instead, I sat there, replaying every word, every detail that didn't match the truth. Karen mentioned Collins before I ever walked into his office. Collins dismissed my deed without checking a single record. Both of them used identical phrasing: scam, fake, unfortunate. Their strategies weren't parallel. They were synchronized. That level of alignment doesn't happen unless two people are working from the same script. The emotional escalation tightened inside me. Not like panic, but like a vice turning with intentional force. I'd already seen the mansion. I'd already seen the stolen architecture. But now I'd seen the corrupted system wrapped around Karen like a shield. This wasn't just an HOA parasite trespassing on my land. This was a network, a structure, a hierarchy, a quiet, government-adjacent HOA cult operating behind desks instead of neighborhood gates. I drove straight to the recorder's archive across the hall. The woman at the desk looked genuinely confused when I asked for a verification search. She typed my parcel number, frowned, typed again, then called over a supervisor. They checked the system, together, then separately, then again. And what they found made my stomach freeze. This parcel was updated 4 months ago, the supervisor said slowly. But the updates don't match change logs, and the access ID is unusual. Unusual how? I asked. She hesitated before answering. This ID usually belongs to internal admin override. It shouldn't appear on ordinary files. And there it was. The truth beneath all the lies. Someone had logged into the property database through an admin override. Someone had modified history. Someone had overwritten my deed records. Someone had buried the legitimate sale behind a fabricated 8-year ownership narrative designed to give Karen the illusion of legitimacy. And only one person in that building had both access and motive: Collins. The revelation didn't shock me. It lined up too perfectly with the smirking dismissal he gave me. But hearing it confirmed out loud sharpened everything inside me. That was the moment I stopped thinking about Karen as a rogue criminal. She wasn't rogue. She was backed. She was supported. She was protected by people who believed themselves untouchable. But that's not even the half of it. I walked out of the archive and into the hallway where a deputy clerk was talking to a contractor I recognized from local job sites. I stopped when I heard one sentence. "Yeah, Henderson's getting everything approved fast these days. It's like someone upstairs is clearing the path." The contractor didn't know I was listening. But those words drew blood, clearing the path, a phrase that matched the pattern perfectly. Karen didn't just steal land. She didn't just fake paperwork. She didn't just hijack architectural designs. She used internal clearance to bypass delays, avoid inspections, dodge planning reviews, and push million-dollar projects through like they were backyard sheds. That level of access wasn't convenience. It was conspiracy. I stepped outside into the blinding sun again, and the emotional escalation hardened into a single, quiet vow. If they thought grief made me weak, they miscalculated. Grief doesn't weaken builders. It reforges them. I drove from the courthouse to the nearest property line neighbor, the only person who would know how long the land sat untouched. When I knocked, a man opened the door with cautious familiarity. Bobby Martinez, retired surveyor. The kind of man who tracks every truck, every contractor, every shift of dirt in a 10-mile radius. "I remember you," he said. "You and your wife walked that line pretty carefully." His voice cracked slightly on the word wife. He invited me in. He poured coffee. He didn't rush the story because he didn't need to. He had already seen enough. When I told him what happened, his jaw locked in place. Then he said 5 words that dropped everything into the basement. "She's lying. All of it." He stood and walked to a cabinet full of notebooks filled with dates, diagrams, and observations. Real records, not forged ones, not modified ones, real ones. "This land was empty until June," he said. "Construction started when the hospital trucks started visiting your house. The villain behavior escalated into something darker than fraud. It became predation, strategic, calculated, cold. Karen hadn't simply taken advantage of my distraction. She monitored it, tracked it, waited for it. The cliffhanger formed right there in Bobby's kitchen. If Karen had been watching my life that closely, what else had she done behind the scenes? And who else was part of the operation? Bobby set the notebook on the table, and when he opened it, the pages looked like a forensic map of my stolen life. Dates, weather notes, contractor plate numbers, delivery truck logs, equipment arrival times, all handwritten in the steady script of a man who understood that truth needed preservation because lies move fast. "Construction didn't begin 8 years ago," he said. "Didn't begin 4 years ago. Didn't begin 1 year ago. It began June 21st. And I know because the first cement truck nearly clipped my fence." His certainty wasn't emotional. It was the certainty of someone who had watched the land every day for a decade, someone who knew its rhythms, someone who would notice the slightest disturbance. And that was why his next sentence sliced through me like a blade made of clarity. "She started building when you stopped showing up." I felt that like a bruise pressed too hard. Julia had entered her final decline right then. My world had been shrinking to a hospital room. I hadn't stepped foot on the land for 2 whole months. And in those 2 months, Karen dug her foundation into the heart of my absence. But that's not even the half of it. Bobby pulled out a folder from a separate stack. Older papers, yellowed around the edges, folded, creased. "She tried this once before," he said. 5 years ago, on me." He handed me a boundary report with 2 maps, one original, one altered. The original clearly marked his property line. The altered version shifted it by nearly 2 acres. "She claimed my fence was on her land," he said. "Said she had documentation proving it. Tried to get me to pay her for encroachment. Real official tone. Real authority. The exact same tone she'd used on me. The tone of a tyrant who expects obedience by default." "How'd you prove she was lying?" I asked. He pointed at the red ink on the altered map. "Surveyor caught micro-adjustments in the measurements. Too clean, too perfect. They looked official, but the math didn't match the land. And just like that, Karen's pattern stretched from isolated fraud into organized theft. Not random, not impulsive, not opportunistic, systematic, planned, repeated, professionally executed. But seeing her pattern wasn't enough. I needed the structure behind it, the power enabling it, the hands inside the county system that made her fraud look official. And Bobby knew exactly where to point me. "Talk to Jennifer Walsh," he said. "Property lawyer, quiet, smart, dangerous when she needs to be. And she's been tracking Henderson for years." Her office sat in a converted bungalow at the edge of downtown. No flashy signs, no receptionist, just a brass plaque and a locked door that opened only after she looked me over through the side window. Inside, papers lined every wall, stacked in organized chaos only a trained mind could navigate. She motioned for me to sit, already studying me the way a surgeon studies a patient before the incision. "Bobby said you'd come," she said. "Tell me everything." So I told her. The purchase, the land, the mansion, the forged timeline, the refusal from Collins, Karen's rehearsed lines, the stolen architecture, the inside knowledge she shouldn't have had. Jennifer didn't interrupt, didn't blink, didn't shift. She simply listened until the end, then opened a drawer and dropped a heavy folder onto the desk. "Karen Henderson's name shows up in multiple disputes," she said. "Not as the claimant, not as the defendant, but as the interested party who somehow benefits from confusion." She spread out case files like cards at a gambler's table. "Here, 2 years ago, elderly owner, memory issues, sudden boundary claim." She tapped another. 3 years ago, woman dealing with chemotherapy, property line revised. And another. Widower, house foreclosure paperwork altered, ownership shifted. My stomach turned cold. These weren't coincidences. They weren't accidents. They weren't clerical errors. They were operations, targeted, timed, cruel. Jennifer looked at me with that sharp lawyer's expression that holds no pity, only strategy. She targets people occupied with grief, illness, crisis, or distraction. People who don't have the bandwidth to defend themselves. My chest tightened. That was exactly when she struck me, when Julia needed everything I had. "Why hasn't she been stopped?" I asked. Jennifer leaned back and tapped another folder. "Because she has help." She slid a sheet of paper across the desk. Audit discrepancies, missing entries, suspicious approvals, all tied to one name: Collins. "Your clerk friend has been flagged 3 times by the state auditor," she said. "Nothing major, nothing public, but enough to show anomalies." "What kind of anomalies?" I asked. "Property transfers processed without verification, permits approved without review, timeline inconsistencies, missing receipts." Every word was another nail in the structure Karen built to shield her crimes. "But that's not even the half of it," Jennifer added. She opened her laptop, clicked through files, and then turned it so I could see. "These," she said, "are permits filed by Karen's construction company." The plans attached to the permits hit me like a punch to the ribs. My designs, my drainage systems, my proportions, my stonework recipes, my draft notes, even a mistake I had made on a previous project, the one I corrected in the final version, appeared on one of her plans. "How did she get these?" Jennifer asked. I swallowed. "Someone hacked my files," I said. "This is my intellectual property." The emotional escalation hammered through my skull. Theft of land was one thing. Theft of work was another. Together, they formed a kind of violation most people couldn't comprehend. Builders put themselves into their designs, their failures, their corrections, their triumphs. Karen didn't just steal land, she stole me. "This is going to become bigger than a property dispute," Jennifer warned. "This is systemic corruption, document forgery, illegal surveillance, intellectual property theft." She paused. "And if we push her, she will push back." But that didn't deter me. If anything, it sharpened the blade inside my chest. "What's our next step?" I asked. She closed the laptop. "We gather proof as much as possible, because Karen will try to destroy your credibility the second she senses resistance." The cliffhanger tightened. Resistance wasn't coming later. It was already coming. The breakthrough arrived faster than either of us expected. Bobby called that evening. "You need to come to my neighbor's place," he said. "She has something you'll want to see." I drove out immediately. The neighbor, a woman in her 70s, owned a long gravel driveway overlooking the only road that led to my property. "I heard what happened," she said. "I've got cameras up for my own protection. They catch everything that comes through here." She led me to her living room where an old monitor displayed archived footage. "Tell me when you want me to stop," she said, scrolling through months of files. "Stop," I said suddenly. There she was. Karen, turning onto my property road on days when I was at the hospital. Not once, not twice, dozens of times. Different outfits, different vehicles. Sometimes alone, sometimes accompanied. And then, "Wait," I said. "Go back 2 days earlier." She rewound. And there he was. Collins. Pulling into the same road, not in a county vehicle, in his personal car. Then a second clip. Him meeting Karen at a roadside cafe. The timestamps lined up perfectly. 2 days after I went to the county office. The emotional escalation ignited. Collins had sworn in his affidavit he had no contact with Karen outside official duties. This footage destroyed that lie. "Can I get a copy of these?" I asked. The neighbor nodded. "Take whatever you need," she said. "People like her shouldn't be allowed to get away with this." And just like that, we had our first undeniable link. Video proof of coordination, proof of conspiracy, proof of misconduct. Proof that the entire county office had not simply dismissed me. They had partnered with Karen to erase me. I drove directly to Jennifer's office. When she saw the footage, she didn't blink. She just said, "This is enough to trigger state involvement." Something dark flickered across her eyes. "But things are going to get uglier before they get better. She'll realize her timeline is collapsing, and she'll retaliate." I nodded. "Let her." But the cliffhanger hung heavy in the air, because Karen Henderson didn't lose quietly, and she didn't strike gently, and she wasn't done with me yet. I didn't sleep the night before the community meeting, not because of fear, but because of clarity. Clarity has weight. Clarity has edge. Clarity sharpens you into the person you have to become when someone tries to erase your existence. By morning, the plan was solid. The meeting wasn't about confrontation. It wasn't about winning. It was about exposure. Karen operated in shadows. Her strength came from secrecy, from intimidating isolated victims one at a time, from controlling the narrative before anyone else knew a narrative existed. So I created a room she couldn't control. A public setting. 30 people minimum. Witnesses, neighbors, property owners. People she had manipulated for years without them realizing it. People who were finally going to see her without the armor of privacy. And I invited her directly. I made sure the flyer reached her mailbox. Nothing aggressive, nothing accusatory. Just a message about property owner rights and recent fraudulent deed activity. Bait she couldn't resist. Karen loved stages. She loved attention. She loved opportunities to play the savior, the expert, the authority. She'd come. I knew she'd come. And she did. She arrived early, wearing tailored confidence and polished entitlement, greeting people like she was the president of an HOA cult running for re-election. Clipboard in hand, designer bag, perfect smile. Not a crack anywhere. She walked the room like she preferred the smell of superiority over oxygen. "David," she called when she saw me, voice warm, false, honey-coated. "So glad you organized this. Fraud is such a serious concern these days." Her ability to perform astonished me. The way she could inject concern into a voice that held nothing but calculation. The way she stood just close enough to imply familiarity, but far enough to avoid accountability. But her eyes betrayed a question. What did I know? How much could I prove? She wanted to read the room before she chose her mask. I didn't give her the time. I started the meeting immediately. The chairs were filled, the walls lined, the air thick. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice steady. "I'm here because I purchased land legally, recorded it legally, held a legitimate deed, and when I visited it recently, I found $1 million mansion built on top of it." A few gasps, a few murmurs. Karen tilted her head with performative sadness. "These scammers prey on vulnerable people," she said softly, stepping forward like a saint ready to take the microphone. "That's actually something I can help explain." "Sit down," I said quietly. Not loud, not rude, controlled, dangerous. The room turned. Karen froze. A tiny fracture formed across her expression. Then she smiled again, tighter this time, and sat. The shift in power rippled through the room like a silent siren. I projected the first photos. The mansion, the stonework, the archway, the architectural details that were undeniably mine. "These designs," I said, "come from my files, my portfolio, my work." Murmurs deepened. "The mansion was built during the months my wife was dying, during the months I couldn't be on the land, and someone used that window to rewrite the entire property history." Karen stood again. "If criminals stole your files," she said, "that's tragic, but it has nothing to do with—" "You built this mansion," I said, cutting clean through her sentence. The silence snapped, her pupils tightened, her breathing changed, and for the first time her confidence faltered. No, that's not those plans." But before she could assemble her next lie, Bobby rose from the back of the room. Bobby, who had lived beside that land for a decade. Bobby, who kept logs, records, times, dates, proof. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady as a strike, "you tried the same thing with me 5 years ago." Karen's head whipped toward him, her eyes hardened. There was no trembling now, just exposed wiring beneath the mask. "You altered boundary documents," Bobby continued. "Tried to shift 2 acres onto your property. Claimed the fence I built in 2008 was trespassing onto land you never owned." The room erupted. Not loud voices, but a wave of disbelief, whispers, tension. Karen raised her hands. "This is completely misconstrued." But Bobby wasn't finished. "I have the correspondence," he said. "The emails, the altered maps, The county replies, all confirming your claim was fabricated. Every word hit like a hammer. Every syllable dismantled the public persona she was clinging to. Then Jennifer stood. Her presence alone changed the air. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't posture. She simply pulled out a folder and set it on a table at the front. You're under investigation by the state auditor's office, she said. Your name appears on multiple irregular property transfers processed by clerk Steve Collins, transfers that bypassed verification procedures, transfers tied to claims you benefited from. Karen's face drained, her breathing sped. The room wasn't hers anymore. She couldn't control the story. She couldn't guide the audience. She couldn't manipulate the narrative. Her power structure was collapsing from every angle. But that wasn't even the half of it. I placed 3 building permits on the table. Permits tied to her construction company. Permits with my architectural diagrams attached. Explain this, I said. Karen stared at the papers as if they were written in fire. I'd need to consult my attorney, she stammered. These could be forged. They were pulled from county servers, Jennifer replied. Under your business name, with your electronic signature. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The room watched her unravel in real time, layer by layer. Her authority dissolved, her facade cracked, her voice shrank. Then someone asked, why did construction start exactly when his wife was dying? Karen's entire body tightened. She turned toward the door. I don't have to answer hostile questions, she said. She reached for her briefcase like it was a shield. She walked quickly, then faster, then practically fled the room. The door closed behind her with a sound that echoed like the end of a rain. But the collapse didn't stop there. People approached me after the meeting. Quiet at first, cautious, then emboldened. A woman told me Karen had once pressured her about incorrect fence placement. A man said Karen tried to convince him he owed back taxes on a shed his grandfather built. Another said he once saw Karen and Collins together late at night outside the county building. Patterns, threads, truths finally surfacing. Karen had spent years preying on fragmented communities, targeting vulnerable owners, leveraging forged documents, and using county insiders to silence resistance. But centralized exposure, public confrontation, was her kryptonite. She couldn't hide behind authority when authority itself was documented against her, and she couldn't maintain control when 36 witnesses watched her crumble. I walked to my truck afterward with a calm that didn't feel like triumph. It felt like precision. It felt like the moment before a deeper collapse, because Karen wasn't going to walk away quietly. People like her don't. She would regroup. She would retaliate. She would attempt to rewrite the narrative again. But now she knew something she had never expected to learn. Her script no longer worked on me. Her documents no longer shielded her. Her tactics no longer landed. I had exposed her publicly. I had cracked the foundation she built her entire operation on. And people who build empires on fraud can't afford public cracks. They patch them with aggression. They patch them with smear campaigns. They patch them with weaponized legal filings. And that's exactly what she did. 3 days later, the retaliation hit. Hard, calculated, personal. The windshield of my truck shattered overnight. My mailbox torn off the post like someone wanted to rip my name out of the ground. But that wasn't the real attack. The real attack was digital. Fabricated social media accounts posting that I had mental breakdowns, anonymous calls to former clients saying I was unstable, claims that I believed every house I worked on belonged to me, claims that I was harassing innocent homeowners, claims designed to turn colleagues against me. She attempted to erase my credibility the same way she tried to erase my land ownership, with forged narratives, coordinated lies, and weaponized vulnerability. But she hadn't learned the most important lesson yet. I wasn't vulnerable anymore. Jennifer called with the next blow. "She filed a restraining order," Jennifer said, "claiming you're stalking her, claiming you're threatening her, claiming you organized the community meeting to defame her." The emotional escalation could have spiraled, but instead, it settled into cold focus. She also filed a $2 million defamation suit. Of course she did. Karen's strategy was simple. Bury me in legal nonsense, overwhelm me, exhaust me, make the truth too expensive to pursue. But she made a tactical mistake. She tied her entire counterattack to one person, one name, one official, Collins. And Collins had already been caught meeting her, already been caught lying, already been caught modifying records under an admin override. She'd built her retaliation on a collapsing foundation. That was the moment I understood the next phase of the war. It wasn't about shutting her down. It was about letting her bury herself deeper with every lie she used to dig out. And she was digging fast. Jennifer's voice carried a quiet power when she said, "Her filings prove collusion, and we're going to use every one of her lies against her." The cliffhanger hung in the space between us. Karen had escalated the fight, but she had no idea that escalation was exactly what we needed to end her. Karen thought she'd thrown a knockout punch. She thought the restraining order, the defamation suit, the smear campaign, and the manufactured witnesses would suffocate me under a mountain of fabricated guilt. She thought she'd broken my ability to fight back. But people like Karen never understand the difference between emotional collapse and strategic silence. They mistake quiet for defeat, not realizing it's the sound a man makes when he shifts from defense into precision retaliation. Jennifer and I moved fast, faster than Karen ever expected, because while she was busy fabricating breakdowns online and flipping through thesaurus-level lies in her legal filings, we were gathering real ammunition, evidence she didn't control, records she couldn't rewrite, witnesses she didn't see coming. The breakthrough came from the neighbor 2 miles north. The woman whose cameras didn't just record occasional road traffic, they captured everything. Every truck, every sedan, every midnight visitor driving toward my land. And there, stamped with dates, times, and cold, unforgiving clarity, was Karen making repeated trips to my property during Julia's final months. She wasn't checking on her 8-year investment. She wasn't tending to a long-held estate. She was trespassing, scouting, monitoring the moment my grief would become her opportunity. But the footage that detonated everything wasn't Karen's. It was Steve Collins, meeting her, laughing with her, sitting across from her at a roadside restaurant exactly 48 hours after he called my deed fake. And that meeting happened before the restraining order lies he swore to under oath. Their scheme wasn't just sloppy, it was traceable, time-stamped, digitally preserved, and ready to be weaponized. Jennifer's voice sharpened when she saw the footage. "This isn't just misconduct," she said. "This is conspiracy, perjury, coordinated fraud." She rewound the footage slowly. "And this is what destroys her entire case." That's when everything blew apart. We filed our response with surgical precision. No theatrics, no emotional pleas, just evidence Karen couldn't outrun. The motion to dismiss her restraining order contained sworn contradictions, surveillance timelines, proof of collusion, and an expert narrative explaining the fraud structure she'd relied on for years. And the moment it was filed, everything shifted. Karen's legal team went silent. Collins stopped showing up to work. The county offices locked down their internal access systems, and the State Bureau of Investigation requested a meeting. That was the moment Karen lost control. Because once the state stepped in, the game changed from property dispute to criminal enterprise. When we met with Agent Thompson, she opened her file like she'd been waiting months for someone to bring her the missing pieces. Inside were documents, complaints, name lists, irregular transfer logs, forged building records, patterns the state couldn't fully prove until the footage linked Karen and Collins directly. "We've suspected Henderson's operation for over a year," Thompson said. "But without a cooperating witness or concrete digital evidence, the pattern wasn't prosecutable." She tapped the table. "You just provided what we needed." Every fraud network collapses eventually, but Karen had built hers on arrogance, and arrogance always leaves fingerprints. The metadata in the photos she used to smear me traced back to surveillance equipment registered to her company. The anonymous posts about my mental decline contained GPS tags pinging from her office. The fabricated messages sent to my former clients referenced details only someone with access to my hacked files could know. The moment Thompson saw the digital signatures, she closed the folder with finality. "We'll take it from here." The raids happened 3 days later. Headlines would eventually call it the multi-county fraud takedown. Karen's mansion, her business office, Collins's home. All hit simultaneously. Investigators found everything. Files, forged documents, altered survey records, backdated permits, cash transactions, surveillance logs, email chains showing coordination with corrupted officials. But the most damning evidence was the stolen architectural portfolio. My portfolio, my designs, my work, decompressed from a drive labeled Client Resources, like I was a catalog she could pillage at will. When Thompson called to update us, her tone was clinical, but the words carried weight. "Henderson's been tracking you for over a year. She identified you as a target the moment she learned about your wife's diagnosis. It wasn't just fraud, it was predation built on grief. And that realization didn't break me. It steadied me. Because predators crumble the moment the light hits them." Collins confessed first. Of course he did. Parasites like him fold under pressure the second their power evaporates. He admitted to altering records, backdating ownership filings, clearing Karen's permits, and flagging vulnerable property owners for her operation. He even admitted to planning how to discredit me if I ever raised questions. His confession was the blueprint to her downfall. Karen, meanwhile, spiraled. She denied everything, then denied denying it, then tried blaming employees, then tried blaming hackers, then tried rewriting her entire story again, but this time she wasn't rewriting it in private. This time she was trapped in a system she could no longer manipulate. The civil resolution came next. Clean, brutal, final. The court ordered every property she stole returned to its legitimate owners. Every fraudulent improvement reverted to the victim. And because she built a multi-million-dollar mansion using my stolen designs on my stolen land, every stone, every tile, every inch of imported luxury became mine, free and clear. Not a single payment owed, not a single lien attached. Karen had built her empire through intimidation, trespassing violations, fake authority, and corruption. And now her empire was being redistributed to the very people she tried to crush. Because of evidence. Because of exposure. Because her system of control collapsed the second it faced someone who didn't bend. And her humiliation wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a courtroom meltdown or a televised breakdown. It was silent. The kind that leaves a villain staring at the ruins of their own making. As they led her out of the county building in handcuffs, she didn't look at anyone. Not me. Not the reporters. Not the investigators. The power trip ended instantly. But that wasn't even the end. The real victory wasn't the mansion. It wasn't the land. It wasn't the restitution. It was the knowledge that she couldn't rewrite anything ever again. She'd lost her access. She'd lost her allies. She'd lost the shadows she hid inside. And all that remained was accountability. Heavy, inevitable, unavoidable. The kind she spent her life avoiding. And standing there, watching the last of her operation crumble, I realized something simple. I hadn't just survived Karen Henderson. I dismantled her. Brick by brick, lie by lie, document by document. And when the system tried to silence me, I learned how to make the system speak the truth instead. The cliffhanger wasn't whether she'd strike again. She couldn't. The cliffhanger was what came next, because victory wasn't the mansion. Victory was what I was about to do with it. The keys felt heavier than metal. They felt like justice condensed into a shape that fit in my palm. I stood at the wrought iron gate that once kept me out of my own land and let the reality settle over me like a new atmosphere. Karen had built this place, every arch, every stone, every luxury detail she stole from my designs. And now, it all belonged to me. Not because I bought it, not because I begged for it, not because I fought her for it piece by piece, but because the truth crushed her entire operation and left the spoils sitting at my doorstep like a quiet apology from the universe. When the gate swung open, it didn't creak. It didn't hesitate. It moved smoothly, perfectly maintained, like the property had been waiting for the right owner to walk through. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt Julia walking with me, her memory tracing itself through the sunlight across the courtyard tiles she never got to stand on. The victory wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Loud victories belong to people who still need to prove something. Cold victories belong to people who've already won. Inside, the mansion felt like stepping into the pages of my own career. Every room a stolen chapter. Every hallway an echo of work I'd done years ago. The custom cabinetry I designed after 10 failed prototypes. The tile pattern I created one night at 3 a.m. because a client couldn't articulate what she wanted, but I understood anyway. The stonework I'd perfected on a mountainside project in Black Mountain. Karen didn't create this home. She replicated what she didn't understand, stole what she didn't respect, and assembled it on land she never owned. She thought she could drown me in my own genius. Instead, she gifted it back to me with interest. Bobby walked in with me the first afternoon, shaking his head like the place physically refused to allow disbelief. "David," he said, "this is the kind of house people spend a lifetime trying to afford." I nodded. I knew. I had built versions of it for clients with more money than imagination. But this one had weight. Not because of its size, not because of its value, but because every inch of it was proof that villains lose when evidence replaces fear. We stood in the great room under the 2-story windows, where sunrise hit the exact way Julia once had described wanting in our cabin. My throat tightened. Bobby didn't comment. Men who've lived long lives know when silence is sacred. In the weeks that followed, contractors stopped by to see it. Old crew members, subcontractors, people who'd seen me build from nothing. The story had spread through the trades faster than concrete cures in summer heat. "This is revenge done right," my foreman said, running a hand along a piece of trim he once helped me prototype. "She tried to bury you. Instead, she poured your foundation." He laughed, but not at Karen. At the universe. At the symmetry. At the poetic brutality of a villain handing her victim the keys to her empire. But the satisfaction wasn't in the luxury. Luxury is decoration. Justice is structural. I built Julia's memorial garden behind the house, reshaping the overly formal landscaping Karen installed into something living, something wild, something honest. Native plants, stone paths, a quiet corner beneath a pergola where Julia's favorite flowers grew in the shade. That was the only part of the property that wasn't about the war. It was about the life she and I planned. The one interrupted by illness. The one hijacked by Karen's trespassing violation and real estate theft. Creating it didn't soften the victory, it sharpened it. Because even while building beauty, I never forgot who paid for it. Karen did. Then came the letter. 5 months after her sentencing. A thin envelope with her jailhouse return address printed in black ink. Inside was bitterness masquerading as entitlement. She complained about her conditions, about the injustice, about how I owed her the value of the house she built, about how it was unfair for me to benefit from her work. She ended with a demand: sell the mansion and send her the proceeds. I read it twice, laughed once, then wrote back a single sentence that ended the conversation forever. Thanks for building my dream house for free, Karen. I didn't hear from her again. What mattered wasn't the mansion. It wasn't the court victory. It wasn't even the exposure of a corrupt network that had preyed on vulnerable people for years. What mattered was what came after. I started training young workers in the oversized garage, turning the space built by fraud into a workshop of opportunity. Teaching them the craft the right way. Teaching them the skills Karen tried to exploit without ever respecting. And in those classes, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. The same purpose Julia believed in when she said building was my language long before I ever believed it myself. Every morning, I swam in the infinity pool Karen paid a fortune for. Every morning, I looked over a property she trespassed on, manipulated, rewrote, and claimed as her own. Every morning I stood on land she tried to erase me from. And every morning I remembered the same truth. People like Karen think power is something you steal. But real power is what remains after their theft collapses on top of them. There was no dramatic final showdown. No apology, no confrontation, no parting threat. Just an ending Karen never saw coming. A cold ending. A quiet ending. An ending where the person she tried to destroy walked through the halls she built, lived in the home she assembled from stolen plans, nurtured the land she trespassed on, trained the workers she underestimated, and slept each night under a roof she believed she'd stolen forever. She never looked me in the eye again. HOA went dead silent.